as well as those of other leading Nigerian banks in terms of their Pan-African drive, which has made it possible for them to be well positioned even at the very beginning of the implementation of this AfCFTA. So we congratulate you guys, and we wish you all the very best, in these great opportunities that abound. We now go into the question and answer session. And the first set of questions will be directed to Dr. Fofak. So, Doctor, you did highlight some challenges which could hinder the achievement of the opportunities inherent in the free trade area, and what Afreximbank is doing to help ameliorate this. Some of these include trade and investment information gap, the trade financing gap, which you estimate at over $80 billion annually, as well as the infrastructure financing gap, which is in excess of $120 billion annually. These are great challenges, but you've also indicated how Afreximbank has positioned itself to be able to support the African institutions to achieve this. But there are other challenges, for instance, red tapeism, entrenched protectionism, which we have seen in the various attacks, and other companies not being welcome within other African countries. Is there any way Afreximbank can also support with this to ensure that the atmosphere and the climate, around African countries are friendly and that people are able to operate freely within these various countries, such that the takeoff will be with limited hitch? How can Afreximbank help with this?
Thank you very much for that extremely important question. It is an issue. We see that between Nigeria and Benin, for reason of transit trade. We see that between South Africa and Mozambique for different reasons. I think it is an issue which could really undermine the potential dividends of the AFCFTA. And the good thing is that we are now in the realm of agreements. So we have to put in place, first and for all, a robust mechanism for settlement dispute across countries and to make them really binding so that there are consequences if agreements signed by member states are not followed. So on the legal side, that's something that will actually provide incentive for the issue that you're raising not to actually surface at all. But at the same time, I think Afreximbank has been working with the African Union Commissions to have in place what we call a mechanism for monitoring the implementations of non-tariff barriers and to ensure that what we've committed to is actually what is being done to make sure the free movements of goods and services across the whole continent. But at the same time, I think there are a number of products that the bank is actually developing and in terms of transit guarantees to make sure that we actually facilitate transit across the border and facilitate trade across border by removing all the border posts and constraints that we see. One will suffice for crossing I don't know how many countries. That's something that the African Union is very much welcome as a way for us to actually facilitate trade across border while mitigating the risk of protectionism. Naturally, I think there are a lot of other issues that we have to consider and that push for effective implementations of the AFCFTA. And the issue, as we move forward, there will be protection is not just closing the border. It may also involve what we call competitive devaluations to take advantage of actually more opportunity when countries are competing against themselves. So these are some of the issues we should be concerned about. And hopefully, as mentioned earlier by my previous predecessor, if we move from trade agreement toward a more deeper integrations, moving toward economic union, monetary union, those issues of competitive devaluation will actually create tension between countries within the union or the bloc will actually be gradually addressed to ensure that we have free and smooth movements of goods and services across the whole continent. Let me stop here.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Dr. Nevin, I don't know if you might have something to add to that, particularly given the point that you made in terms of Nigeria exporting brains, to other continents, and this issue of pushback, that we have been seeing, in several other countries. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, just I think thank you, Ebenezer. Yeah, I mean, I think just building also on what Shuma said. I mean, specifically the financial services area, I think many smaller countries are continuing with their own kind of bespoke regulations and not harmonizing on a global scale, which makes it difficult. They suffer because they don't get good financial services. And to be really honest about it, I don't want to pick out a country, but if you have subscale bank, you think about modern banking, right? And you've got complex issues about regulation, you've got complex issues about IT, you've got complex issues about cybersecurity. A small local bank is not really able to deal with that, right? So, we're getting these Pan-African banks, a lot of it driven by the Nigerian banks, and ultimately it's going to benefit Africa really, really well. But the pushback, if there's a pushback, there's the local regulators who have not harmonized and are protecting their turf. And I think one of the implications for it is, if a country, a small country, is going to kind of give up its local FS or banking regulation, it's got to get something. So if Nigeria is exporting brains and exporting financial services, Nigeria is also going to be importing something else. That's the whole nature of comparative advantage. Every nation is supposed to benefit from this. So if we're trying to build a powerhouse in financial services in Nigeria, or Nollywood, which is our comparative advantage, or IT outsourcing, and yet we block other people who may want to import manufacturing, it's going to be a problem. And of course, now we become kind of the conflict between different industry groups within Nigeria. So, our friends at MAN, our friends at LCCI, our friends in the financial services, it's not simple. But, go back to what Taiwo said earlier. To me, financial services are such a natural for us because we have the comparative advantage. It's very high value. We're already all the way, a long way into it versus other industries. We should be building on that, but we also have to be prepared. Every nation has to benefit from AFCFTA, and they have to have something they can contribute to other African nations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the perspective on that. Dr. Fofak?
Yes.
There's another question that I'll have for you, which is on the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, an interesting initiative that Afreximbank is pushing, which is aimed at settling transactions in local currencies, in the respective countries. And that way we can reduce foreign currency content of African trade. Very interesting initiative, but can you please just highlight a bit about how you intend to achieve this? Perhaps an example will help to clarify. And then also, do you intend to float local currency bonds, in the respective markets to enable you raise enough local currencies in the various markets to meet this interesting initiative?
No, thank you very much. I think as my good friend Andrew said earlier, the issue of hard currency, liquidity constraint has been a major challenge for the continent. It's also been even more exacerbated by the issue of correlation to commodity cycle. And so it's something that ought to be addressed. And we've always been wondering, why do we need a US dollar to transact, to settle trade between Nigeria and Benin, or between Nigeria and Ghana? Yes, that's what it is. And it becomes more difficult when access to that dollar is a constraint. So what the Pan-African payment settlement system aims to do is to reduce that constraint to actually unlock cross-border trade within the continent. So it is a very important initiative, jointly sponsored by Afreximbank and the AU Commissions. And the President of Ghana has actually mentioned that during the commercial trading ceremony on January 1st. And we've actually taken the time to really make sure that it's something that will work. It's not just designing the concept, but engaging African Central Bank using ECOWAS as a pilot. So we've actually been working closely with central banks in the ECOWAS family, with Nigeria CBN being one of the major champions of the project, to make sure that the pilot testing exercise is undertaken and successfully undertaken before we actually go full live. And definitely, it's something that will only work if we have close collaboration with central bank when it comes to clearing and settlement. And the fact that we are a Pan-African institutions enable us to actually play that role in that particular space. That's the first thing. Now, we've also, even before the Pan-African payment settlement system, we've been we developed our local currency program within the continent to essentially begin to engage in local currency trading whenever it is possible and profitable. We've actually been doing that somehow in Southern Africa, where there are prospects for us engaging in that space, as mentioned earlier. And we believe that as we get deeper and deeper into implementing PAPS, that local currency program will actually help a lot in actually mobilizing resources domestically to make sure that the issue of currency mismatch does not appear as a constraint in the implementation of that exercise. I think I see a lot of complementarity between our local currency program and what we've actually been doing in the digital space to reduce the dollar contents of intra-African trade. And our estimate are that we may be able to save as much as $5 billion annually by moving toward the Pan-African payment settlement system. But that's just one aspect of it. But we also realize that it will actually also help a lot in formalizing the informal trade. And as you know, informal cross-border traders actually settle in cash, which is highly risky in terms of carrying cash around across border. So through PAPS, we'll reduce that risk significantly and position the continent for a more favorable trading environment where the risks are mitigated and the prospect of financing trade are more significant. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Fufak. We really appreciate your perspectives on this, and thank you so much for your time as well. We know you have to leave about now, so thank you so very much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for that. It was a wonderful session, and very timely, quite frankly. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I'm sorry for my co-panelists, but I have to join another meeting now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So now I'll move on to Chuma. Just on this same subject, since we're discussing some of the initiatives introduced by Afreximbank to help drive regional trade. Now, given your own personal experience, given what Access Bank is doing, so we've discussed the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. There's also the Trade Information and Regulation Portal, as well as the Customer Due Diligence Repository Platform. These are very interesting, platforms, that I think banks can leverage. I just want to know how Access Bank, if Access Bank is already leveraging this, or how the bank is positioning itself to leverage this, which I believe other banks should follow suit. Can you just share with us also your experience, in that area, if you're already benefiting from it, or how you intend to leverage on these initiatives?
Yeah, I'll talk about a very key component of our Africa strategy, which is scale. The inevitable truth is that as we become a larger and more scalable player in Africa, our opportunities to benefit from some of these underlying infrastructure initiatives would only be greater. And we're actually encouraging other Nigerian banks in particular, as they think about their Africa strategy, as they go into Africa, to not necessarily look to be marginal participants or participants in the banking sector in a more pedestrian way, but to actually focus on becoming more scalable players. Our strategy is focused on being top 5 in every African market that we are present in today or looking to expand into. And there's an importance around that. With the appropriate level of scale, what that allows us to do is, from a shareholder perspective, to be able to justify the right investments at a country level, not just at a group level, into innovative products, innovative services, be part of innovative infrastructure. Whether it's I talked about how we are moving away from just being a traditional bank into becoming a holdco. So that would allow us to invest in more innovative areas within the financial services industry, invest in payments infrastructure, invest in switches, for example, invest in some of the initiatives that AfriExim is already putting in place, right? Nothing stopping us from not just being a beneficiary as a banking sector player, but also being an investor, being a motivator, and being an incubator for some of those initiatives that will not just benefit us, the larger that we are in those markets, but benefit the entire sector, all participants, and particularly benefit the customers that we're looking to serve across Africa. One of the things that we've said, and we are hell-bent on achieving, is to bank over 100 million customers across the continent. So we will not just be looking to provide banking services, but we want to be part and parcel of some of these initiatives that make it easier for customers to access financial services wherever they are, in terms of being in the most rural areas in some of the countries that we operate in, or being at the front and center of some of the urban activity. So we are not just sitting back and hoping some of these things AfriExim and some of the other DFIs and some of the regulators are doing. We're actually moving towards a model, and you'll see us making specific investments and specific activity in some of those spaces in the coming months after our holdco license becomes more operational. But we definitely want to be an active participant, and we are in advanced stages of incubating several of those models that will aid the likes of what AfriExim is doing today.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. But let me take it further from there. Initially, we discussed with Dr. Fofak and also with input from Dr. Naveen regarding protectionism in some of our African countries, the pushbacks, the xenophobic attacks. But I've noticed, a very seamless move by Access Bank, in its various, at least I'm fortunate to have a relationship with the bank, and I know that most of these investments in other African countries have been seamless. Can you just share with us, what is behind this seamless operation across the African countries, so that other businesses can, benefit from it and also learn from it, because the banks seem to be making good inroads into the other African countries, but some of the other businesses seem to be having challenges. Are there things that we can learn from that, so that all other businesses can also follow the path that the financial institutions have set?
Thanks, Ebenezer. We've been very lucky and we've been very fortunate in the execution of our strategy, largely due to partnerships. One of the things we've been very clear about, and we've executed on, I think well, and could do better as we grow, is to leverage local partnerships and some of the international partnerships that are available in local markets. One of the easy examples is South Africa, which you already alluded to. The institution that we're investing in, we're not going at it alone, right? I think there's always that school of thought that you're better off having a smaller share of a bigger pie, right? So as we think about South Africa, for example, we're going at it with the likes of PIC, which is the South African largest pension fund in Africa, but local, institutional, and that's on the shareholder level. We're going at it from a partnership model, and the way we've engaged the pre-existing employees at the target bank. We've gone at it from a partnership model, and the way we've engaged the regulators We've gone at it with the way we've engaged every single stakeholder in the process. So I kind of emphasize the importance of partnerships as we grow. We acknowledge that we require those partnerships. It's important. It makes our execution a lot easier, both in terms of doing the deal and after doing the deal. So it's something that I think, again, cannot be overemphasized as we grow and as other African financial institutions grow. And even the institutions looking to come in from the rest of Africa into Nigeria, right? It'll be important that they think about partnering with us or any one of our other industry participants in furthering the overall growth of the financial services sector. Our M&A philosophy as well is quite focused on that. We're not just looking to grow organically. I think we understand the need for the African banking sector. In each and every market, the need to consolidate further. We think Africa still has, within each country, still has too many banks. So we want to be an active consolidator within the African banking space. And that just completely requires, again, a partnership approach, right? We could model our growth strategy purely on organic growth and trying to outcompete the next bank, but no, we're actually looking to partner. So in countries like Zambia, we've merged, and in Mozambique, we've merged. In many other African countries, we're looking for opportunities for M&A to ensure that we consolidate and we create stronger institutions, we create more scalable institutions that can impact the lives of the citizens in each of those countries, or lives of Africans as a whole, in a more meaningful way, by virtue of the breadth of the scale and the impact of our size in those markets.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman. And Dr. Nevin, I would like to also have your take on the Access Bank strategy, which has proven to be very successful. Same for a good number of the Nigerian banks. Is there anything you would like to add, in terms of what businesses should look out for, to be successful as they go out?
Well, I think two things. First, I think we can all commend Access Bank in particular as being a remarkable story and leadership. Around the world, it's always perhaps a dangerous or risky strategy to make acquisitions, but they've done it brilliantly over the years. I was in Nigeria when they took over Intercontinental. Many people thought that was a risky thing. They integrated it incredibly well, and they have emerged out of it now. Really, I believe it's the largest bank by assets, and so all credit to them. But I also think that the entire industry, so the other banks that are stepping out, GT, First Bank, UBA, and EcoBank, which I know is based in Lomé, but I count somewhat as a Nigerian bank. The thing is, the Nigerian market is so competitive, right? And the banks are really, that's my own focus area. I lead the financial services practice at PwC. It's my main job. All the banks are our clients, and the quality of the management. You just listen to Chuma speak, and the kind of intellectual rigor that they approach this with is really world class. And so it's not a big surprise to see what's happening with Nigerian banks taking the lead. It's the largest economy in Africa. But it's also combined with such a tough operating environment here. The Nigerian banks know how to solve problems. So they go into places expecting it to be challenging. They take the appropriate steps for all of that. So it's not a big surprise. And I think the rest of the continent is certainly afraid of the Nigerian financial services industry. And of course, then we've got all the players like InterSwitch and the up and coming fintechs as well that are very powerful. So I don't think people should be surprised at that. I think it's just in this form fantastic to see Access Bank taking on South Africa and stepping into the South Africa in a measured way. It's amazing if you think about it. We always talk about South African businesses and they should be reaching out to the continent. They've been very timid, right, in the last few years, and yet it's the Nigerian financial institutions that are out front. So it's fantastic. All credit to Chuma and the entire Access Bank organization, to all the other banks. And as you said, GT Bank has just taken its holding license, which again, he mentioned that allows them to do things that are a little more innovative in a fintech, more of a fintech manner, so they can compete against the fintech. So it's just nothing but great things to say about the Nigerian financial institutions.
Thank you so very much. I think the very last question that I have, here, which has been raised by one of the participants, is the potential impact of AfCFTA on Nigerian external reserves. I know we've said, it's promote competitiveness, can grow general, GDP and all that. But can you just have a view or give us a view on what you think can be the potential impact of AFTA on Nigerian external reserves?
Yeah, so I mean, let me speak with my economist hat here. I mean, Nigeria has a barbell economy right now, right? So, and I call it that because we export the lowest value-added product in the world, which is crude oil, and we export the highest value-added product in the world, which is brains, Nigerian brains. So our economy looks like a barbell. It's got, thin, skinny. So then, in terms of the external reserves, it depends on the strategy. But we have advocated we should be focusing and continuing to export brains. That's what's highest value-added. So why would we go to the other end? The more than crude oil, but the other end of that scale. And if we export brains, we're going to find out that. I mean, just to put a number on it, I think the price of cassava is $150 or $200 a ton on the global markets. That's 1 ton of cassava. I mean, you take one of Amal Hassan's people working in the center, and let's say I don't know the number, but let's say they're earning $20 an hour for Nigeria. So 6 hours, 7 hours of one person in the call center versus an entire ton of cassava you have to move through the system. I really would like to see Nigeria focus on exporting brains, and then we're not going to have any problem with our balance of payments, right? And you think of, again, I cited before, London, Singapore, New York. I mean, you think about when we write the history of Brexit, or we may be writing it in 2 or 3 years, the biggest problem for the UK is they've just been cut off of the market for their biggest high value export, which is financial services. They have no deal with the EU, right? So let's focus on the things that have the highest value added. And then we will have, our balance of payments will be in good shape. Our current account will be in good shape. A lot of our challenges with the devaluations will be addressed. But trying to export physical products that are not that high value added, not zero, but not high value added through the port structure, to me, is not the winning strategy right now.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And on that note, on behalf of the Nigerian Economic Outlook team, I would like to thank you so very much for your insights. I know that that's Dr. Nevin. I know you've been doing some excellent work in supporting our banks, even as they move out. And we look forward to seeing more of that into the future. And to Chuma, thank you very much for your time, and congratulations on the successes that Access Bank has had so far. We pray and look forward to more successes under the AFTA arrangement. And on that note, I also want to thank all the participants for your time. I hope all enjoyed the sessions. I enjoyed it very, very much, and I thank you all for your attention.